Within the immaculate halls of one of the city's most prestigious schools, where young students paraded their crisp uniforms and influential last names, there was one figure who seemed completely out of place. A young woman with a modest appearance, timid eyes, and discreet clothing worked behind the counter of the school's small snack bar. While the students chatted over international trips and the latest luxury brand releases, she kept her eyes down, arranging bread and coffee with the dedication of someone who had learned early on how to survive in silence. No one knew her name. No one cared. To them, she was simply the snack bar lady, the one with the thick countryside accent, clumsy gestures, and a shy smile that seemed to apologize for existing. Some students laughed behind her back, others didn't even try to hide it. They mocked her in line, imitated the way she spoke, and looked at her with disdain, as if her simplicity were an offense in a place where appearances mattered more than any virtue. The students' parents, used to measuring people by status and resumes, didn't miss the chance to ridicule her in whispered conversations either. Some of the mothers, sipping their expensive coffees, would comment with scorn that it was inappropriate for someone so unrefined to be there, among the cream of society. It was as if she, with her sun-darkened skin and worn-out shoes, polluted the carefully constructed image of perfection. And still, every day, she arrived before sunrise. She prepared the snack bar with care, arranged the products, tested the coffee machine, and made sandwiches with a delicacy unnoticed by those who only knew how to judge appearances. Her tired face hid a story no one there had ever bothered to discover. Her timid eyes, often red from exhaustion, carried dreams that would never be taken seriously by that audience of judges. It didn't matter how kind she was. It didn't matter how punctual, polite, or correct she was. At that school, being different was an invitation to contempt, and she felt it in every muffled giggle, every glance that passed through her as if she didn't exist. The loneliness weighed more than the boxes of snacks she carried every morning. Sometimes, in the pause between the comings and goings of students, she would retreat behind the counter, tapping away on her old phone with intense focus. No one noticed. After all, to them, what could possibly matter about what the snack bar lady did in her few minutes of rest? It was easier to assume she was scrolling through social media or playing some silly game to pass the time. But the truth, the truth was so big, it barely fit inside that timid smile. A truth that would soon be powerful enough to shatter the silence and explode in the middle of that environment soaked in prejudice. A truth that would change everything, for her and for all those who, blinded by their own biases, had never imagined what a silent soul was truly capable of. As the school prepared for its traditional annual fair, with its luxurious booths and flawless performances, no one knew that something far greater than any spectacle was about to unfold, something that wouldn't just be seen, it would be felt, because sometimes it is precisely in the most overlooked silence that the voices capable of transforming the world are hidden. Chapter 1. Invisible Among Them. At that school, everything sparkled. Impeccable facades, perfectly tailored uniforms, confident voices echoing down the hallways, and among all that luxury, there was her, behind the cafeteria counter, wearing a stained apron and a timid smile that tried unsuccessfully to shield her from indifference. Her name was Mariana, but almost no one knew it. Some called her country girl, others simply ignored her. Most pretended she didn't exist at all. Mariana served coffee and sandwiches as if every gesture was an apology. She kept her head down when laughter slipped between whispers, swallowed hard at the jokes about her accent, pretended not to hear. When they mocked her simple clothes, her body was there, but her soul, her soul seemed to shrink each day in that place where she was just an annoying background noise in a perfectly rehearsed scene. Sometimes, As she handed over change with trembling hands, she thought about how much it hurt to be treated as if she were less. As if her story, her dreams, her struggles were worth less than the whims of someone born with an important last name. There were days when Mariana wished she could vanish, be swallowed by one of those grand wooden doors and disappear without a trace. That would be easier than enduring the looks of disdain, easier than pretending not to hear when a mother said, loud enough for her to catch it, "Look at that. Seems like they brought in farmhands to work here now." Mariana's blood boiled, but she smiled with teary eyes as she pushed another cup of coffee across the counter. She knew her place. She knew that there she was not allowed to be more than a shadow. She knew that to them she was invisible, and invisible was how she was expected to remain. Still, when the school announced the upcoming fair, something in Mariana's chest beat differently. Not because she was going to take part, of course not, but because among the booths of traditional foods and tech projects there would be space for innovation, and she had something hidden, something no one there could ever suspect. For months during breaks between one customer and the next, between a forced smile and a quiet cry in the stockroom, Mariana had been working on something big, something her simplicity disguised, something her silence protected like a precious secret. While the students learned with the best teachers, Mariana studied alone on a cracked phone screen. While they practiced foreign languages abroad, she translated online tutorials with a tattered dictionary by her side. She had created something that to her felt small, but to the world it might be enormous. But at that school, where appearance mattered more than essence, who would care? Who would take the time to listen to the cafeteria girl? Who would believe that behind a timid smile and calloused hands there was a brilliant mind? Mariana didn't know. Maybe no one. Maybe it was better to keep it to herself, like she always had. That late afternoon, as she wiped the now empty counter, she heard laughter behind her. She turned slowly and saw a group of girls looking at her. "Look at that. Is she going to the fair too?" one said mockingly. "Maybe she'll sell cheese bread and moonshine." Another added, bursting into laughter. Mariana gripped the rag against the counter. She felt the tears pushing to break free, but she took a deep breath. Smile. Swallow. Lower her head. That's how she survived. That night, alone in her rented room, Mariana opened her notebook. There, carefully drawn, was the sketch of her project. Lines of code that looked like another language to those who never had to fight to learn. Her app, her small, enormous dream, a digital literacy program made for children in public schools. Easy, intuitive, free. Something she had created for those who, like her, had to learn through grit, courage, and lack of opportunity. Mariana ran her fingers over the paper as if caressing a child. Her greatest fear was that it would never leave the drawers of her hope. Her greatest wish was that somehow, someday, someone would see what she had to offer, but tomorrow would be another day of forced smiles, another day of polite contempt. Another day she would serve coffee, while her dreams, so vast within her, remained invisible to everyone else. She closed the notebook, turned off the light, and before falling asleep she did what she always did. She prayed in silence to be strong, strong enough to endure, strong enough not to give up, strong enough to believe that her time would come, even if the whole world kept telling her otherwise. Chapter 2. Voices that Go Unheard. The day of the school fair dawned golden, with a clear sky and a gentle breeze dancing among the trees in the courtyard. Everything seemed perfect, at least for those who belonged to that world. Families arrived in gleaming cars, mothers in flawless dresses, fathers with watches that shone brighter than their smiles, the students spread out across colorful booths, robotics projects, international cuisine workshops, modern apps that, more often than not, had been built by paid programmers not by the students themselves, and there was Mariana behind the snack bar counter, as always. Her apron clean, though worn, her eyes alert, though tired. It was just another day for her, another day of passing unnoticed by those who didn't even know her name. Until, in the middle of the morning, the school coordinator walked over to the counter. "Mariana, come here," he said, glancing around as if being seen speaking to her was inconvenient. She wiped her hands on her apron, surprised. It wasn't common for someone to call her by name. It wasn't common for someone to speak to her at all, except to ask for change. One of the exhibitors dropped out. "We're going to have an empty booth. Just bring anything you have, so it doesn't look bad." His tone was nearly one of disdain. Anything, anything. Mariana felt her throat tighten. Part of her wanted to say no. Part of her wanted to run far away, but another part, older, stronger, whispered, "Go, show them." With sweaty hands, she ran to the small backpack she kept hidden behind the counter. She pulled out a simple handmade poster. And her old phone, where her app was installed. With her heart pounding so loud it seemed to echo in the hall, she set up her little makeshift table, tucked in a forgotten corner between two large and eye-catching booths. No one noticed. No one stopped, and Mariana, sitting behind her empty table, felt smaller than ever. Minutes passed, so did hours. People walked by, laughed, chatted loudly, without even glancing in her direction. Shame weighed on her chest like a suffocating fog. Fear tightened in her throat like a knot. "I should have stayed at the counter. I don't belong here." These thoughts spun through her mind like a silent storm. Then a little girl with messy braids and curious eyes approached. "Miss, what's this?" she asked, pointing to the phone. Mariana smiled, shy and surprised that someone had actually noticed her. "It's a little game. To help you learn to read," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Chat." Girl gently took the phone and began to play. Her eyes lit up with each new word she managed to form. Her smile was wide and pure. Moments later, a kindergarten teacher passing by stopped to see what the girl was doing. Curious, she leaned toward Mariana. "Where did you find this app? It's excellent," she exclaimed. Mariana, cheeks flushed, answered, "I made it, ma'am." The teacher raised her eyebrows. "You?" "Yes, I," said Mariana, lowering her eyes, as if she had done something wrong. The teacher took the phone, navigated through the app, explored its features. She remained silent for several minutes. Then, looking straight at Mariana for the first time, she said, "Do you have any idea what you've created?" Mariana didn't know how to answer. She was so used to being ignored that this moment of recognition felt unreal. The teacher stepped away quickly, already on her phone pointing toward Mariana's booth. Within minutes, more people began to gather. Parents, teachers, even a few students, curious. Mariana tried to explain, her voice soft and her gestures hesitant, how the app worked, how it helped children recognize letters and words in a fun, engaging way, how it could be used on simple phones without needing a constant internet connection. Each word she spoke was a battle against shame. Each smile she received was a breath of hope. Still, among so many important voices, hers felt small, fragile, timid, and in that world, where the loudest voices were the ones that got heard, she still felt invisible. But for the first time, something different stirred inside her. A spark, a flicker, maybe behind all those eyes that had always ignored her, something new was being born. Maybe, in that place where she had only known contempt, there could be room for recognition. It was still too early to tell. But that evening, when the fair's final lights dimmed and she packed up her few materials, Mariana didn't cry. Not from sadness. This time, she cried because, for the first time in a long time, she felt like someone had truly seen her. Not just The Girl Behind the Snack Bar. Padu Chapter 3. When the Truth Comes to Light. The next morning, the school felt more agitated than usual. Teachers hurried through the hallways, whispering in hushed tones. The principal, who rarely came down to the cafeteria, was seen walking briskly, his face serious. And Mariana was behind the counter, as always, wearing a clean apron, with a timid smile, making coffee and selling snacks as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. She felt it in the air, a different weight, a kind of expectation that had never existed there before. Around 10 in the morning, the academic coordinator, a well-dressed woman with a firm voice, appeared at the counter. "Mariana, could you please accompany me to the principal's office?" All eyes turned to her. Tension twisted in her stomach. She wiped her hands on her apron, uncertain if she had done something wrong. Was it forbidden to set up a booth at the fair? Had her presence there caused discomfort? With short, nervous steps, she followed the coordinator through the school's spotless hallways. Every glance felt like a silent judgment. Every footstep echoed too loudly. When she entered the principal's office, Mariana froze. There stood the principal, several teachers, and some members of the school board. She instinctively shrank back. "Mariana, please have a seat," the principal said, with a tone she couldn't quite decipher. She obeyed, her hands trembling slightly. "Yesterday, we had the opportunity to discover your work," he began. "At first, I must admit, few noticed, but thankfully, some of the early childhood teachers insisted we take a closer look at your app." Mariana just listened, her heart pounding, out of rhythm. "We invited an educational technology expert to evaluate it." He paused for effect. "And we were surprised." He stood and walked to a large screen mounted on the wall. Within seconds, images began to appear. Photos of children using the app, reports from public schools that had already adopted the tool, impressive numbers on early literacy rates, and in the corner of each slide, her name. Mariana Silva. Some board members stared, mouths agape. The academic coordinator added, "We discovered your app is currently used in more than 50 public schools in the region, and it was even mentioned at a digital education conference as one of the most accessible and effective tools for low-income communities." Mariana blinked, unable to believe it. It was as if they were talking about someone else, someone she had never had the courage to become. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" asked the principal, genuinely curious. Mariana lowered her head, ashamed. "I thought it wasn't important. I thought no one would care." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with shame, but not hers. Shame from those who had ignored her, those who had looked down on her. The principal cleared his throat. "Mariana, we'd like to make you an offer." She lifted her eyes, hesitant. "We want to hire you as our educational technology consultant." Mariana nearly fell out of her chair. "And in addition," he continued, "we'd like to offer you a full scholarship to study computer science at our partner university." She covered her mouth, trying to hold back the tears. "And more," added the coordinator with a gentle smile. "We'd love for you to give talks to our students, to tell your story, to inspire others to believe in their own worth." Mariana couldn't respond immediately. The tears overflowed, without shame, without fear. For the first time in her life she was seen, not for her simple clothes, not for her accent, not for her shyness, but for what she carried inside, for her intelligence, for her quiet courage, for her light, a light no one could ignore anymore. And so, in that moment, the cafeteria girl stopped being just another anonymous face, stopped being just an apron among perfectly pressed uniforms. She became an example, a living symbol that talent doesn't wear expensive clothes, that brilliance doesn't need a polished accent, that a person's worth should never be measured by their job title, but by the invisible strength they carry in their heart. That day, with no fanfare, no spotlight, Mariana lit a flame no one could ever put out.